One of the first things that I've always appreciated that is that coming from an engineering background, it helps me understand a product better. That's what I've realized. Like the first half a decade of my career, I felt like, oh, I can do this better because I come with this understanding of technology that most product managers are not equipped, especially my peers at that time. So what I want to talk about is what are the aspects of a product platform that you need to pay attention to as a product manager, product owner, when you're starting, when you are getting experienced in product management, how do you get better at it? By understanding the underlying product platform. So I know I came from an engineering background, but I also know a lot of product managers who did not come from an engineering background, but have over time developed the skill of trying to understand the product platform better, and for that reason are better product managers. So like I said, these are all keywords that kind of make up what I'm going to speak about today. So in terms of product platform and its makers, so what is a product platform? How is it different from product? Is it part of product? Is it not part of product? What is it and how nuanced is it? So I think one of the things about a product platform is when you go into learning about a product, you can learn about a user experience. Like all of us know what the user experience in Uber is. We use Uber, we know what the user experience in Google is, we know what the user experience in Seamless is. You don't have to be a product owner to know the different user experiences and different features that are available in products. So as a product owner, how do you understand the product better? One of the things that I always try and do in any new product that I come across and any new team members who join the product team or my product team is I would always tell them to talk to the QA. To talk to the QA to understand all the different use cases that they run through during a release. Because like I said, the user experience is quite straightforward. Once you know this is the product you're going to manage Gmail, it's relatively easy to look at all the different aspects of the user experience in Gmail as a user. But if you sit down with your QA and ask them to run through all the different use cases, now they are going to give you a view of the product in terms of what happens when there is a timeout, what happens when a certain service interaction is not available, what happens when a new feature goes out but it doesn't get implemented to 100% as expected. What are the different things that people test, that your QA tests for, actually makes up the entire user experience of your product that you normally as a front-end user would not have captured. So that would be your first step I would recommend. If you are an existing product owner or new to product management, I would highly recommend do a sit-down session with your QA. Do more than one sit-down session with your QA, because your QA is going to be able to tell you all the different edge cases which then translates into all the different possible use cases and features that live within your product that you probably were not aware of. If you're new to the product, you're not aware of. Even if you were in the product for some time, but you haven't spoken to your QA about all the different use cases they run for a release, talk to them. They will unravel to you the different use cases that you've completely missed, even though you've been the product manager for, 3 months now. The next step in understanding your product, I would say, once you are comfortable with, hey, now I know all the use cases, now I know what they test when they go in for a new feature release, the next step is to talk to your, in different teams, the different setups. Some teams have tech leads, some teams don't have tech leads, some teams just have senior engineers and developers. Talk to those senior engineers. Talk to those senior engineers and understand what are the different components of your product. What does the front end do? What does the back end do? How does the front end talk to the back end? What are all the different systems? Because no product lives by itself. They talk to systems upstream, they talk to systems downstream, they have encryption, they have services they depend on, there is data, the data is in databases, and there is cloud integrations, and there is infrastructure engineers. Your tech leads will tell you all the different components that they are working on to make this product what it looks and feels like and how it works. What that does is that kind of gives you information about all the different functionalities that exist in the product, which translates to your user experience. As a product person, you have to always pay attention to the fact that when they are explaining a product feature to you in terms of a function, you always need to be able to map it back to the user experience. So if they say, hey, we have a function that does this, your question to your tech lead is going to be, why do we have this function? Because I don't see the user making use of this feature, so why have you built this function? Why do you talk to this service? What do you do when the service is not available? And things like that. So when you sit down with your tech leads to understand the components of your product platform, you will also come to understand your user experience better, or what your product is delivering to the user better, and what is available in your product platform. And this happens more times than you can imagine, is that your product will have functionality that's not translated into a feature or a user experience because nobody bothered to sort of talk to the engineers and developers and connect the dots to say, hey, this information is available. Maybe we can take this information out and add a feature to do X, Y, Z. That is why understanding your product platform from a technology function standpoint is really important. Now, you've spoken to your QA, you've understood all the different use cases there are, you have spoken to your tech leads and your engineers, you've understood all the different functions and integrations and all that, and you're very comfortable with knowing how your product works. Now, the next step would be, once you're very, very familiar and you have got it all, you have a complete understanding of your product platform, I would recommend talking to your architects. Because now they will tell you what you did not know about the platform. Because most times tech leads and developers are working on small portions of the product, components of the product that they're responsible for. But the architect is the one who has a holistic view. And in fact, architects are the people who have actually framed the different components. And what that conversation would help you understand is why the platform was put together in a certain way, why a function was developed in a certain way. Because like I said, there will be functions that are not used. Your architect will be the person who will tell you why that function exists in the first place. And architects, good ones, also have a futuristic view of the product. So they would have enabled that architecture or put that architecture together with a futuristic view in mind. 5 years from now, this is what I think my product will do. And this is why my architecture should be ready now to be able to do it, because the day the product manager or owner comes to me and asks for something, I don't want to be rushing to make changes to the different components that exist. So that is kind of like, I think, knowing the product platform from your testing team, your development team, your architecture team, I think that will give you an understanding of how the product works, what it does, why it exists, and how it functions. Now, one of the things that for most product people who come from a non-technology background is that they're going to say things that are not going to make any sense to me. They're going to throw words at me that absolutely I don't understand. And it's very intimidating when you don't come from a technology background. It's absolutely fair. I have not written a single line of code in like 7-8 years, and time to time I get, they tell things where I would go, I don't know what that means. But what I would say is that really good, number one, you have to tell that, you have to say that, I don't know what that means, can you simplify that for me? And number two is that good engineers, good architects are able to simplify that to you. They want to make sure that you understand what they're talking about. If they keep throwing jargon at you, they probably are not very good at what they do. That's my experience. So just be very, very brave in just stopping them and asking them questions about why are we doing this? What does this mean? I think it's the first foundational pillar of product management is to understand your product platform. And this is how I would go about understanding any new product I'm exposed to. And I hope like you guys can pick up on that and do that as well. The next one is product design and product management. Most people who start in product management are engaged in product management because they think they can bring the user experience to life. Hey, I've looked at Uber, I can do this so much better, I want to be a product manager. I've looked at Seamless, I can do this so much better, I want to be a product manager. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's very exciting to be able to think about experiences and be creative about what a end user will see. Because at the end of the day, all the products that we use, everyday products we use, are solving problems for us, making it seamless for us to approach a service or use a product. So it is absolutely fine that people want to be invested in design and experience as product managers. But what you have to realize is product design is just one aspect of product management. It is a very key function, definitely, but it is still just one of the many hats that you have to wear as a product manager. I started in a startup. My product life started in a startup, and it was a great place to start. And if any of you can afford to join a startup, and if you find the right idea and a startup will hire you, please take up that opportunity. Things that you learn in a startup, whether in a product role, engineering role, or a design role, you're never going to learn it in any company, including Apple and Uber and all the big people there. It's just the things that you do in the different hats that you get to wear in a startup will shape you better as a product person. That's my personal experience. So when I started in a startup, I was just a developer. I have an engineering degree, a master's in information systems, so I just started as a developer. But what I learned over time was that I would tell my development team that, hey, I'm going to go work with the designer on this. Why don't you focus on making this algorithm better, because clearly you are better at this than I am. And I would be the one working with the designer to say, hey, this is what we were trying to convey. Can you make a mock-up that translates this into a user experience? And then I would also be the one saying, okay, let's not add more features until we've finished this feature. And I started having all these conversations, and I realized that I am better at prioritizing, managing the roadmap, and enabling a solution rather than just writing code. And also, the people who were writing code in that startup had like PhDs in operations, so I kind of shied away from competing with them. So startups will give you a really good idea. So if you ever get a chance to work in a startup, please take that up. It will be a golden opportunity, I would say. So from a product design standpoint, so a product manager, the role of a product manager is to always go from problem to solution. What is your product trying to solve? Your product is trying to solve a problem, is trying to sort of create a service that the user needed but didn't know that they needed, didn't realize that they needed, and that's what we're trying to do. For a product person, what is very, very critical is to understand what that solution is to define that solution. And to define that solution, you don't have to design it. When you are going to add a feature or even creating a new product, you don't have to design the user experience. You don't have to even know what the users want to see. All you have to know is, how is this going to solve my user's problem? And what are the different elements that I need my product platform to supply so that the problem is solved for the user? Once the solution is defined, that's when you go to the designers. That's when you start, and if you're a designer yourself, that's when you start thinking about designing the solution. And that's when your user experience part comes in. And yes, it's the product design part is more fun than the solution part, obviously, because with solution, you'll have to think about information that's available, data that's available, what are the different aspects of, what are the functions that's already available, what do we have to create new, is this solution going to work, is this a good market fit? You have to think about all of those things. Does this solution really make sense? Experience, on the other hand, is trying to sort of think about, if I was a user, what would I do? But that's where I would rely on the user experience designers, the product design team, to inform, to sort of bring that solution, make it into a seamless user experience. That doesn't have to be a product manager's day job to design that experience. That's when you rely on product design team. They will make that experience come to life, and that's going to be their day job. Again, if you're a startup, you probably are doing both, but I would say that what is critical as a product manager is to know that you have a solution, and this is where the solution is coming from. From a product standpoint, this is the information that I'm going to be able to access. This information is going to be available in real time, or I'm presenting a forecast to my user that's going to solve XYZ problem for the user. Whatever that solution is, you have defined the solution. You know how that solution will get executed from a product platform standpoint. That's when you go to your product designer. And your product designers will also, in turn, ask you a lot of questions that'll help you fine-tune your solution, absolutely. And for that, you can depend on, there are different schools of thoughts on how to make a user experience better. You can do user group testing, you can do multivariate testing, you can rely on a lot of analytics to tell you what the user likes. And if you're like me, I would just go with instinct. But there are different schools of thoughts on how do you pick the best user experience out there. But that is where your design team will help you. But product managers need to focus more on the product solution and less on the product design. Hire experts like to do that for you. And if you are one, that is absolutely great, but don't start your design until you have defined your solution. With product feature that you have to look at, basically, I mean, this is nonprofit, so you have to look at ROI. So if they have enough information to prove that their feature is better for the product platform and for the brand at large, then absolutely. What I would say is that it won't happen that they want to completely develop something new. It probably would be that they want to fine tune or they want to change aspects of the feature or aspects of the solution. I think if you have a concrete solution, especially as a product manager, if you have a concrete solution, at least 8 out of 10 times your solution is going to be on point. If you've had all those discussions with your tech team, with your design team, and you're going to present the solution to stakeholders, 8 out of 10 times it's going to be that feature. It's going to stay. It's probably going to have changes because of different insights other teams bring. But 8 out of 10 times you're going to get it right, because it's not just you, it's also the team that works on the platform, the team that's worked on the design and owns the design. And this kind of has been my experience more from my startup days than working in a bigger brand, is that if you have time to fine tune your solution as a product manager, then you wouldn't have to change your feature a lot. So the next part I was going to talk about is stakeholder management, and what do you do for stakeholder management as a product owner. So whether you're working in a startup, a medium-sized company, or a large company like Amex or Google, you're always going to have stakeholders, right? They're going to be people who are marketers. They're going to be people who are from legal and compliance. There are going to be people who own certain parts of. So, for example, in American Express, I own the acquisition platform, but the products that are marketed in the acquisition platform are owned by different product teams, right? So there are going to be a lot of different stakeholders that come into play that kind of inform your roadmap, and at times it's going to feel like it's not my roadmap anymore, it's the marketing team's roadmap. And that happens from time to time, that roadmaps get taken over. What I would say, the one thing that I have learned in the few years I've done this is that the success of a product depends on how good the product manager's visions translates into a product roadmap. Right? If the product manager's vision, a good product manager's vision, gets translated into a roadmap and gets executed perfectly, then it's going to be a successful product. If you're not able to get a roadmap if your roadmap is not aligned, if you're not able to execute on your roadmap, the success of your product is going to show that. And you are going to be responsible for, as a product owner, you have to be responsible for your roadmap. Right? You have to try your level best to be responsible for your roadmap. And I say try your level best because when you work in some large entities, it's hard to sort of keep control of your roadmap because there are too many stakeholders at times for some initiatives. But I think the best thing you could do to a product as a product owner would be to sort of sit down and understand what are the different things that are coming your way that are going to shape your roadmap. I would say, first of all, understand what your technical team wants out of the product for this year, for this quarter. What are the things that they want to do? It could be tech debt. It could be because they're seeing a tectonic shift and they want to be ready for it. Your architects and your tech team will inform you what that is if you ask them. And then there is going to be the legal and compliance things that are going to come your way, because there's no way you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to say no to those guys. So you have to take that into consideration. And then there is going to be business asks that are basically ROIs, right? They're going to say, we invested this much in this product last year, we better see XYZ result this year. And then there is going to be asks from your marketing team who have seen 2 campaigns go out really great and they want to repeat that again this year, but they want it to be different this year. So you're going to have all those asks. What I would recommend is the compliance piece and the technology piece you can't get out of. So those two are going to be broader themes. Every year, every quarter, try to have 5 themes in your product roadmap or product strategy that can accommodate for most of your stakeholders, and at the same time, make sure your vision gets executed. So that is going to be really critical to the success of your product. And if the 3 things, aside from compliance and technology, if the 3 things that you've put together as broad themes kind of can absorb your stakeholder ask, then you're going to be fine. And if you can't, then you're going to have to explain to your stakeholders why that is the case, why their ask doesn't fit into the roadmap for this year, why you're not going to be able to take that up this year. You will have to have those conversations. It kind of goes back a little bit to understanding your product platform, making sure that you go from solution to design. If you have a good understanding of your product platform and your expectations, if you have a good understanding of what problem you're trying to solve and why, then having those conversations with stakeholders whose asks don't fit into the teams probably is not going to be very difficult. So that is the part that you have to pay attention to. If I'm going to put 3 broad things on my roadmap, do I know why? Do I know how I'm going to do it? Do I know if the end user is going to benefit from it, and how? And that is key to, at least in my experience, that has been key to how you manage a really good roadmap. Because you will get a lot of asks. You just have to make sure you know your stakeholders well. If you're managing a product roadmap, you probably know all of your stakeholders really, really well. As in not just their names and what they do for a living, but also why they do what they do for a living, right? Because, I mean, all of us work for a paycheck, but still, there is always something that excites you and gets you to your job every single day, and every stakeholder will have a reason why they're in marketing, why they're in legal, or why they're in tech. So you have to be able to understand that. It is quite nuanced. It again goes back to relationship management at work. And it's very important that you know why they're coming up with certain asks. And if you have been in a product in a while, then you kind of know why your marketing partners want to run this campaign over and over again, because every time they run this campaign, it's a hit with the users, and it's amazing turnaround for the company, it's good for the brand. So they're going to come back again and again and ask you. And there is nothing wrong in executing such campaigns, but you also have to think about, is that going to keep your product fresh for the user? Right? Doing something over and over and over again in the same way that it's been executed just because it's successful, is it right? I mean, it works for Google, but you'll have to think about whether it's going to work for your product. And there are going to be things that are always going to be there in your product, and that's fine. But you will have to constantly think about keeping your product fresh for the user, at the same time making sure that you have a solid strategy for the year, you know? And if you are joining a product team halfway through as a senior product owner, then that would be my first question. What's the strategy? What are we trying to do this year with the product? Like 5 broad themes or 3 broad themes. Then working to understand why your stakeholders want what they want becomes easier. I come from a startup background. I never had to, explain why I'm going to do one thing versus not another. So when you start working with a lot of stakeholders who are equally important and your product gets sandwiched between them, what I learned over time is the best way to manage that is to socialize what you're working, what your product roadmap is, what you're going to do this quarter, forget this quarter, what are you going to do this sprint, what your plan is for the next sprint. And having the stakeholders in the same room to have that conversation about, hey, you want me to do this, it's going to take me not doing X, Y, Z for this person, not to let them fight with each other, but sort of explain what the product, what the value is going to be overall for the brand, for the function that the product serves. It's usually easier when you sort of say, hey, this is what we're trying to do, and this is the ROI we're expecting out of this feature, and it's new, and it's going to refresh the brand versus what you would like to do. Maybe we can do it 2 weeks later or 2 months later, but here is what we're trying to do, and would you be okay with waiting, right? And sometimes they just see the value of it, because at the end of the day, everybody gets to come to work for the same brand, and they come to and sometimes they're not happy with that. They're not happy at the end of the meeting that you kind of prioritize one over the other. Even though you explained it, they're not going to be happy. And at times it is tough. I'm not going to lie and say everybody is going to be happy. They're not. And if you're working in a product that has a lot of visibility within the company, then that is harder, right? Because everybody would want a piece, and you are going to have to tell more than one person that you can't do something. And I think you stick to here are the 5 key themes in my product strategy for this year, for this quarter, and here is the ROI that we think we're going to get by this feature, by doing this feature at this point in time, and that's why we're going ahead with it. And find a way to also sort of make room in your next quarter to do what they want to do. But yeah, it is, the people are, your stakeholders, some of them are going to be disappointed, but it's the way of life.